So for section 1.4, we're going to be adding real numbers. People tend to do really good at this section, so you want to make sure that you take your time and understand this section, because the next one, subtracting real numbers, we actually will bring back to adding. So if you're really good at this section, most people, they get comfortable at this, then we'll learn how to take section 1.5 back into section 1.4, and you'll have no problem doing these, okay? So let's start with some easy stuff. What if I add two positive numbers? A positive plus a positive number gives me a result that is positive. And that makes sense. That's intuitive. You're like, yeah, 1 plus 37. If I add 1, if I have 1 and I add 37 more to it, I have a total of 38. When they are the same sign, they will combine. Well, that's also important, because what happens if I add two negative numbers? A negative plus a negative gives me a result that is negative. When they are the same sign, they combine. If I have negative 3 plus negative 7, the two negatives combine. They don't cancel each other out. Think of it this way. If I get 1 and I get 37, I get 38. But if I owe 3 and I owe 7, I don't all of a sudden have $4. If I owe and I owe and I owe, if I take then I have negative and negative and negative, then those combine and they stay negative, and I end up with 10 negatives. This is my favorite way to explain it. There's other ways kind of as we go, and I'll show you. But the idea of taking the same sign and combining, to me that makes sense. You can use the number line. If you're not liking the way I'm covering this and you want to try using the online, I believe they're going to try to explain it with the number line. Just to me, that gets a little more complicated. Okay, so we know a positive plus a positive, they combine to make a positive. A negative plus a negative, they combine to make a negative. Same sign, we just combine the numbers, we keep the sign. What if they're not the same sign? What if I have a positive plus a negative? Or a negative plus a positive? Well, it matters. And why does it matter? Well, because if they're the same sign, they don't combine. I'm sorry, if they're the same sign, they do combine. If they are opposite signs, then they cancel. And I'll kind of show you a visual for this to help you understand it. But if I had 17 negatives and I put in 11 positives, and I'm going to draw this out. If I had friggin' 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, what was it? 17 negatives. Every time I put a positive in there, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, every time I have a negative 1 and a positive 1, they make a 0. Every time I have a negative 1 and a positive 1, they cancel each other out. And every positive cancels with every negative that we have. And so what am I left with? Well, we end up with more negatives, right? So we end up with negative 6. What we do is we cancel and we keep the larger sign. Why? Because that's what we're left with. If I canceled out 11 positives from 17 negatives, I still have 6 more negatives. If I owe you 17 and I put in 11, I don't all of a sudden have $6. It doesn't work that way. I still owe you. I still have a greater deficit. I still have more negatives. On the flip side, if I took those 17 negatives and I did, instead of 11, if I did 19 positives, 14, 15, 16, 17, I would have what? After all of these zeroed out, I would be left with 2 more positives. So all we really need to do is actually kind of subtract. When we cancel, we are subtracting. I really would just take this, and we take the larger number minus the smaller number, and I'm left with 6. That's what canceling is. What you have to remember is to keep the larger sign. Why? Because even though I'm subtracting these, I'm canceling them. I'm left with not 6 positives, but 6 negatives. So when I have negative 17 plus 19, I take the larger number. I cancel out the smaller number. because they're going to cancel out and leave me with 2. But 2 what? We had 2 more positives. So that's what we're left with. So same sign, we combine. When I have opposite signs, the answer matters. It changes. They'll always cancel, but it won't always be positive, it won't always be negative. It always depends on which one has a larger sign. So if I have 20 plus negative 13, I don't feel like jumping on a number line. I don't feel like drawing out 20 positives and 13 negatives. You need to remember that if they are the same sign, they combine. These are opposite signs, so they will cancel. How will they cancel? Well, I have 20 as the larger number. Cancel out the smaller number. 20 minus 13 gives us 7. That does not mean our answer is 7. What you have to remember is 7 what? What did we have more of? When I canceled out the positive and negatives, I was left with 7 more positives. What if I have 20 plus negative 35? Well, what's the larger of those two numbers? 35. I cancel out 20 of those, leaving me with 15. That doesn't mean the answer is 15. You have to check it. We were left with 15. When I canceled 20 positives with 35 negatives, I was left with 15 what, though? 15 more negatives. I could draw that out, but as I keep going, I don't want to, on the next example, I don't want to have to draw out 89 negatives. I want to do it when it's easier, so I get to this one, I go, okay, these are opposite signs. They cancel. Whenever I have a positive one and a negative one, they zero each other out when I'm adding them, right? So I'm going to cancel, and I'm going to do the larger number minus the smaller number, leaving us with 77. 77 what, though? We have more negatives. 12 plus negative 81. We cancel. 81 minus the 12. 70. I think that's 69. 69 what, though? We had more negatives. So check that out. When they are the same sign, they're going to combine. When they're opposite signs, they're going to cancel. That's really the only big concept for this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and kick it up a notch. We're going to do this with fractions and decimals. Oh boy! Look at this next example. 1/2, negative 1/2 plus 1/8. Are they the same sign? No. They're opposite signs, which means we're going to cancel. But I can't do anything with fractions unless they have a common denominator. I need the pieces to be the same size. I got a 2 and an 8. Yes, I can make them both a 16, but the LCD of 2 and 8 is just 8. I don't have to change the 8. I could just change the 2 into an 8. It's not wrong to make it a 16, it just means you're going to have to simplify more at the end. It makes your life harder. So how do I change that 4, 2, and 8? We give them a common denominator by multiplying. I cannot just multiply to the bottom. I must also do it to the top. Because it makes sense. If I just did it at the bottom, then 1/2 would turn into 1/8, and that doesn't make any sense. 1/2 and 1/8 are not the same thing. If I do it to the top and the bottom, then 1/2 is the same thing as 4/8. And 4 out of 8 is half. If I've got 4 out of 8, that's half of something, right? So this is still 1/2, just in a different form. So this becomes negative 4/8 plus 1/8. We already said the signs are opposite, so we are going to what? Combine or cancel? Same sign combine, opposite side cancel. So I'm going to cancel, take the larger number minus the smaller, and that gives us 3. When we cancel out the parts, negative 4 plus 1, I'm left with 3. But 3 what? We had more negatives. What happens to the denominator when I add fractions? Well, I combine the numerators, but I leave the size of the pieces, I leave the denominator the same. So all those skills from the previous course don't go away. You need to handle decimals and fractions. Let's kick it up a notch. 5/6 plus negative 1 1/3. Once again. Now first of all, I'm dealing kind of with a fraction, but the issue here is that the second one's not really looking like a fraction. You need to know how to turn a mixed number into a fraction. So we need to be able to multiply and add and make this 5/6 plus 1 times 3 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Keep it as a negative. So now I got 5/6 plus negative 4/3. These are not ready to add. I need a common denominator for 6 and 3. Our least common denominator would be 6. So, and these are arrows basically. We're kind of continuing on. So now, if I want to make that a 6, I leave the first one alone. I multiply the second one, top and bottom, by a 2. So that's going to make that plus. What does this do for me now? Now that they have a common denominator, I can add the numerators. I can add the top. What is 5 plus negative 8? Well, when they're opposite signs, they cancel. So I do negative 8, the larger number, 8 minus 5, I cancel them, and I'm left with 3. But 3 what? We had 3 more negatives. So negative 3 over 6. Some of you want to circle and keep going. I'm going to tell you right now that if you type that in, hit enter, they'll just be real nice and say, don't forget to take your answer and reduce it. 3 and 6 are both divisible by 3, so that we end up with negative 1/2. There are a lot of steps to this, and I'm going to have you do this type of thing on the test without a calculator, but do keep in mind, something like not reducing at the end, I'm not going to make that a right or wrong. That'd be like a quarter point. There are a lot of steps to this and a lot of points. So the little mistakes, yeah, don't try to make them, but the idea is that it doesn't have to be like a make or break it issue. Just go ahead and be comfortable with your integers, be comfortable with your decimals. This is going to be our last chapter where I'm not letting you use that calculator. What if we have a decimal? The rules don't change. Opposite sign, we cancel. So I take the larger of these two numbers. Which one's larger? Well, how about the 8.1? I cancel out 4.6. 1 minus 6 is not just 5. I cannot have one finger and take away 6 of them. That's really weird. So we regroup from the 8 and make that 11 minus 6. 11 minus 6 is 5. But now this 8 got borrowed from, so it's 7 minus 4 is... So my answer is going to be 3.5. Positive or negative? Which one was greater? We had more positive, makes that answer positive. What if I had just changed the signs on that question and had the 4.6 positive and the 8.1 negative? Well, they're still opposite signs, aren't they? So what does that mean? We would still subtract 8.1 minus 4.6. I would still have 3.5, but this time there were more negatives, so our answer would be negative 3.5. What if they were the same sign? Same sign means instead of canceling, we would combine them. Add 8.1 plus 4.6 to get 12.7, and so this would be negative 12.7. Okay, and if they were both positive, then I would still get same sign combined, but this time the 12.7 would be positive. Okay, opposite signs, a little more complicated where we cancel. Same sign, easy. You just combine them, add them, and keep the sign. They're going to also kick it up a little bit with some of our, mixed numbers and our order of operations. So this one just has kind of a lot of parentheses going on. When I do the parentheses, start on the inside. Here's a set of parentheses. Here's a set of parentheses. Brackets are like parentheses. The furthermost on the inside would be this negative 8 plus 6. So that's what we would do first. Start on the inside. Start with the grouping on the inside. Negative 8 plus 6. Opposite sign means we cancel. To what though? Well, we had more negatives. What do I do with the question? Bring the rest down. What can I do now? Well, inside, now we're kind of done with that set of parentheses. So we still got to work with what's inside these parentheses. -4 plus -2. Same sign. If I owe you 4 and I owe you 2, I don't all of a sudden owe you, right? I don't owe you 2. I don't all of a sudden have to. They combine. Same sign, combine to make -6. And last but not least, -9 plus -6, same sign, combine to make -15. So we will have our order of operations from prior. I don't even think it's as hard with some of the stuff. We're just now going to be adding integers, all those positive and negatives. Last but not least, they are going to have a couple word questions with these. You need to know whether these mean positive or negative. If I gain 3 yards, if I lose 12 yards and I gain 13 yards. So we're watching a football game, right? We watched 3 plays. They gained 3 yards. They then lost 12 yards. They then gained 13 yards. Where are they at? Mathematically, what has happened, right? Well, gaining 3 yards, you need to know that gaining means that those 3 yards are what? Positive or negative? Gaining positive yardage, right? But then they lose. That means that they get pushed back 12 yards. So now that's going to be, what if they then gain 13? So now they push it back the other way. So the question again, what's happened? What's happened over these 3 plays? Well, I can find that out by combining 3 plus -12 plus 13. And there are 2 ways to do this. What a lot of us are going to do, if you're comfortable with kind of the previous section, is you're just going to go from left to right. And so you're going to do 3 plus -12. I got 3 positives, 12 negatives. Combine or cancel. I hope you know by now. Opposite signs cancel. So I do. 12 minus 3 is 9. But 9 what? More negatives. Plus 13. Opposite sign. They're going to cancel. I'm going to do 13, cancel out 9, leaves me with 4. 4 what? What did we have more of? This time we had more positives. So this will be an overall change in 3 plays of positive 4 yards. If I gain 3, I lose 12, and I gain 13, I've got a total of 4 yards positive. This could be money too. It could be $3, $12. You know, if I gain $3, I lose $12, I gain 13, I'm up $4, right? It doesn't have to be football if you don't like that. One more option. And this we're going to, and I'm not saying this, if this doesn't make sense to you yet, don't stress out about it, but there's going to be a property we talked about in addition where I can redo the order. So if everything that's happening in here is adding, I can actually combine just the positives with the positives. I can add in any order. The only thing happening in this math problem is adding. So I can add the 3 and the 13. Same side combines to give me 16. Then bring down the plus -12. Opposite signs cancel. 16 minus 12 would be still positive 4. So if that bothers you, don't do it that way. We'll talk about that more later. But I want you to know that if that's something you do know how to do, you can feel free to do that in these questions. So that should be it for 1.4. Go ahead and keep working on the homework, and I will see you guys soon.